The flicker of torchlight danced across stone walls, casting Joan's shadow long and trembling on the cold square of Rouen. The air reeked of damp timber and fear. Once the Maid of Orleans, she now stood condemned, stripped of armor and dignity, clothed in a coarse white shirt. Her hair had been cut, her power reduced to a single flame's glow on the pyre. This was no battlefield, it was the final theater. Before we descend into her last hours, give this video a like, subscribe, and join us as we walk the fire's edge in history's darkest moment. The trials had crushed her, one by one. Accused of heresy, sorcery, cross-dressing, Joan faced ecclesiastical men whose robes hid steel hearts. Captured by Burgundian forces, sold to the English, then dragged through courts and dungeons, she endured betrayal worse than any sword. In her final chamber, she prayed with trembling lips, clutching a small crucifix, her wrists chafed from chains. The priests argued over doctrine above her head. She knew they would not spare her. Yet somewhere within, she still believed a higher justice awaited. That belief would burn with her. In the candlelit tower, Joan's body ached. She had not eaten. She had not slept. The chains bit into her wrists. The stone floor bit her knees. Her whispered prayers were muffled by the wind that whispered through barred windows. She stared at a drawing of the flames beyond, imagining the crack of heat, the roar of fire. She tried to steel her mind. She whispered the name of God. She recited lines from her mission. Pain Preston. Tears slicked her cheeks. A voice in the night promised redemption, but the dawn would come anyway. France, ravaged by war, watched and whispered. The English crown eyed her death as both justice and spectacle. To execute Joan was to extinguish French resistance and claim divine sanction. Propaganda painted her as a witch. But ordinary Frenchmen remembered her victories, her words, her courage. Among peasants, she was heroine, martyr, symbol. Her trial was not just against a woman, but against a national soul. If she died obedient, France would bow. If she died defiant, her memory would burn brighter. So the English forced her fate into the public square, that the world might choose a side. Myths grew overnight. The French claimed she saw angels. The English claimed she was possessed. Cartoons and ballads spread her legend faster than fire spreads flame. Across rivers and fields, people told her story, the voice, the banner, the faith. Children wept for her. Priests preached about her sins. The line between truth and legend blurred. When she died, she would not fade quietly. She would be remembered, either as saint or heretic. And centuries later, historians still argued which she became, though some souls already knew. Night brought her final vigil. Joan knelt alone, candle flickering at her feet, a single guard outside the bars. She spoke to the crucifix as if it were a friend, pleading for mercy for herself and for France. The wind rattled windows, as though answering her prayers with sighs. She felt the weight of chains, the cold stone pressing against her skin. Every bump of footfall above made her heart leap. She imagined her accusers gathered behind tapestries, whispering, leaning. She felt their hate as keenly as any blade. She prayed, though her lips quavered. Morning came with thunder. The skies wept above Rouen. Joan was escorted to the Cathedral of Notre Dame for a final Massachusetts. The vaulted arches echoed with chants and dread. She walked in her white shirt, her hair ragged, her gaze steady. Townsfolk craned their necks while officials averted their eyes. She knelt before the altar, received communion, rose and said, "Lady Jesus." Her voice, though soft, carried across marble. Some wept openly, others stiffened. The church declared her obstinate, but she stood as witness between heaven and executioner. Her final procession began. She was led through narrow stone streets, flanked by soldiers and clergy. Rain slicked the cobblestones, torches sputtered. She held her shoulders high, yet fatigue pulled her behind. Townsfolk scattered, fearful of English wrath. The guard knocked aside umbrellas. She passed silent houses, faces hidden behind shutters. At the scaffold square, they forced her to mount the platform. Chains rattled. A red straw mat awaited. She looked skyward, as if reading signs among clouds. The world held its breath. The moment had come. The pyre stood tall, oak logs stacked high, wood smelling of pine and heat. Official clergy stood nearby, urging her repentance. She asked only for a cross to hold. They gave her a small wood crucifix. She embraced it. The flame-hungry wind blew embers. She stepped onto the mat, knelt, and prayed. The priest read her sentence aloud. "We condemn you to burning to death." The words echoed. Her heart pounded. Flames seemed distant at first, then closer. The air curdled with smoke. The world watched as she faced fire and faith in one breath. She knelt and recited the Ave Maria with trembling voice. Flames licked the base of the pyre. Smoke curled, thick and suffocating. Inquisitors stood watching, their faces austere. She raised the crucifix above her head, her white shirt catching amber glow. The crowd hushed. The first tendrils of fire touched her gown. She cried out, but not in pain. She cried for France. "Jesus, mercy," she cried. The fire rose. The heat pressed outward. The smoke stung, the wood crackled. Her prayer merged with screams, and the pyre claimed her finally. The flames rose hungrily. Her hair caught blaze first, then shirt. The cross in her hand blazed. The body beneath convulsed, caught in agony. Witnesses shielded their eyes. The fire painted flickering halos on stone facades. The priests chanted final absolution, their voices drowned by crackling wood. The scent of burning flesh drifted across the square. The crowd turned away. The clergy remained. The flames consumed her. Her legacy burned alive in memory, but her flesh turned ash. That moment became legend, heroine and martyr entwined in smoke and flame. When the fire died down, all that remained was ash and bones. The wind scattered them, the rain washed away stains. Officials gathered fragments. They refused to release them, burying the pieces in an unmarked grave near St. Owen's Church. The scaffold was dismantled, the square scrubbed, but the echoes remained. The priests declared her soul damned. The people whispered that she had passed to heaven's glory. In that silence, her voice grew louder. The world questioned which was stronger, flame or faith. English authorities sealed her trial as lawful, yet searing doubts remained. Was she a witch or a saint? A hero or a heretic? Diplomats, poets, and common folk argued both. Her execution was legal, but justice? The church exonerated clerics later. France rehabilitated her. Centuries later, in 1920, she was canonized as a saint. A girl born to peasant parents, sold to war, tried, and burnt. She finally joined the saints she had once claimed to see. Her death became redemption by memory. Her story doesn't end with flame. Her legacy shaped nations. She inspired French nationalism, feminist icons, artistic depictions. Opera, literature, paintings, they all drew her into myth. Yet within myth, her truth remains, a woman who spoke to God, defied monarchs, and accepted fire rather than falsehood. She became a lens through which all ages measure courage. The scaffold that should have silenced her voice only magnified it through centuries. The fire burned flesh, history burned memory. Let us reflect on betrayal. Charles VII, crowned as king, was once her protege. But when she lost political favor, she was abandoned. The clergy who once revered her turned cold. Her judges had profited from her victories. Her allies watched from shadows. She was sacrificed by power she once served. The fire that killed her also illuminated how fragile loyalty can be. In the end, the sword and the flame were not her foes, betrayal was. In Rouen damp stone cell, before the final dawn, Joan wrote a letter praising her companions, forgiving her enemies, begging for France's union. The letter was hidden in her shirt. The guards found it the next morning, charred at the edges. They burned it too, fearing it would inflame hearts. Even death could not contain her spirit. Her words, half lost, traveled beyond walls and guards. In that defiant letter, she voiced the voice of a nation, resolute, suffering, hopeful. Imagine the sounds, the crackle of wood, the gasp of flame, the prayers choking. The heat pressed outward, the smoke billowed overhead. The crowd's silence was heavier than any shout. The church bells tolling in distance, merging with the crack of splintering logs. Every witness felt the tremor of history shifting. Underneath that fire lay sorrow, power, and faith. In that moment, she bridged the mortal and the divine. Her fall was not final, it was transformation. Many modern scholars debate the precise details. Did she recant? Was her shirt soaked first to slow the fire? Did she scream or whisper? The records conflict. But even in uncertainty, a deeper truth persists. Joan became more than flesh. She became symbol. Fire and chains bound her, yet they freed her from time. The legends that followed distort detail, but capture essence. And essence, of courage, of faith, of sacrifice, cannot burn. Her canonization came centuries later. In Rome's basilicas, her name is spoken among saints. Pilgrims travel to Rouen, offer prayers and tears at her memorial. The place where she died is now hallowed ground. Yet no flame burns there, only remembrance. The chains are displayed, the scaffold reconstructed. The city embraces her as redeeming flame. History's judgment corrected what men did wrong. Her death, once shame, now echoes as sanctity. In art, she is always robed in white, cross in hand, haloed in gold. Heroine or martyr, she is immortal. Yet every image hides ashes beneath fabric, weights beneath crowns. Artists try to transmute fire into grace. But the real Joan was flesh, bone, fear, and transcendence. Every brushstroke is compromise. Still, the paintings draw crowds. The fire, the chains, and betrayal remain invisible beneath saintly alabaster. Her voice, though silenced, speaks across centuries. She challenges tyranny dressed in piety, commands armies while female, warns that power can destroy those who wield it. To resist is to risk flame. To obey is to concede soul. She teaches that faith may demand sacrifice, and when power demands betrayal, the faithful must choose whether to burn or resist. Sometimes you see her in dreams, a girl in armor, cross aloft, gloves scorched. Fire surrounds but does not harm. Behind her stand children, soldiers, saints. The land behind her is fractured but healing. She walks forward, toward dawn. The dream fades, yet hope remains. Her last hours became the first hours of legend, a flame never extinguished. When we measure her life by the pyre, we forget the battles she won. Orleans liberated, Loire crossed, tides shifted. Those victories were not small. She dared a peasant's claim amid monarchs. She drew swords with her faith as shield. And though betrayal felled her, those triumphs flicker in every retelling. The fire could kill her body, but not her legacy. Power loathed her in life. Memory adored her in death. Her story is a warning. Woman who commands fear is always threatened. Authority demands silence, obedience. Joan spoke loudly and paid with flame. Many who follow power shrink and bow. But her story tells those who still speak. Your voice may betray you, but silence kills the soul. Across the fields of Europe, rival states watched. The English cheered her death, the French mourned her flame. Diplomats debated legality, clergy debated sanctity, poets debated meaning. But common folk, farmers, women, children, whispered her name in prayer. Her faith, once suspect, became shield. And in that bridging between ground and cathedral, her story lived where law could not touch it. In the modern era, scholars sift through charters, depositions, and chronicles. They debate whether she recanted in the end. They argue over timing, motivations, omissions. But no account captures the fire in her eyes. The records are bones, her spirit is flame. What historians piece together is provisional, but every hypothesis curves towards something greater. That suffering, faith, and betrayal forged her into the symbol we inherit. Questions linger. Could she have escaped? Could the church have spared her? Would recantation have saved her? None can answer with certainty. But even those questions are part of her power. They force us to reckon with what we value more: life, reputation, or truth. Joan's last hours demand not pity, but reflection. Because in her surrender to fire, she gave the living a mirror. What would we burn for? Today, when flames rage across the world, when voices are silenced for belief, Joan reminds us that martyrdom is not antique. It is alive. She warns that authority, unchecked, will always demand obedience. She shows that faith, when betrayed by power, can become flame. And flame, though fleeting, lights the path forward. We remember her last hours, the chains, the fire, the betrayal, not to romanticize death, but to honor courage. If you walk through Rouen today, red shadows linger near the old cathedral. The air seems hushed where she died. Pilgrims leave flowers and crosses. The pyre is gone, but memory remains. The stones whisper, the winds carry her name. The world moves on, but her fire still burns. And there, in silence, she waits, not defeated, but sovereign in spirit. Her last hours were agony, flame, chains, betrayal. But her story became transcendence. Joan of Arc, the peasant girl crowned by God, executed for power's fear. She walks through history not as victim, but as legend. She teaches that flame can't kill a soul and betrayal can't fully silence truth. If this tale moved you, like this video, subscribe, and ring the bell so we can continue uncovering history's fiercest, brightest flames.